of the questions you get asked a lot is your age, so we're not going to go into that as such. But I'm curious, how you got into politics and how this made you feel was the path for you?
Well, I mean, my age is something that's continually brought up, but you see, I think people are just far too politically educated and switched on now to care particularly about aesthetic things such as age or gender or anything else. You know, I can't help what age I am. But when you look to your representatives, I think the most important things are, do you understand the issues that are affecting this area? Do you have the answers to them? Are you honest? Are you capable? Do you have principle? These are the things that matter most, and I think that's why people are coming towards SNP, because it's not about me per se, it's about the quality of what I'm saying and the quality of argument, and that's where the SNP are standing above all else.
There are some people who don't quite understand politics and what things like austerity are. Could you explain in your own words what austerity cuts are and why you're fighting for them?
Austerity is basically about punishing the poorest and the most vulnerable and ordinary people for the mistakes that bankers and politicians made. It's basically this idea, we're sold this story of, obviously there was a very real financial crash that hit the world very hard, and we do have to make amends and try and rebuild the economy. But austerity is this idea that you do so by cutting money in ordinary people's pockets, by removing their ability to spend, by cutting wages, by cutting benefits, by cutting the welfare state. It's ideological because austerity doesn't work. Austerity makes life difficult for people. What this election is a chance to do is to change that. And the only party who are wanting to offer something other than austerity, other than cuts to public sector, other than cuts to ordinary people's lives, is the SNP. Because what we're saying is we actually want to invest in our public services. We want to spend more on our people. We want to invest in their talents, and we want to make sure that ordinary people who work hard and have those who don't work hard get the opportunity to work hard, so that we can get money into ordinary folks' pockets so that they can start living decent standards of life.
From what you're saying then, another of your promises is to campaign against benefit cuts that leave people relying on food banks, which in this day and age is a terribly sad fact. So how do you go about doing that then?
Well, food banks are actually worse than just a sad fact. They are an abomination. They're an insult. I mean, you look at this entire society, I mean, food banks wasn't even a word after the Second World War. People reliant on the charity of others to eat. That's Victorian, that's something that you would read in a Charles Dickens novel, and yet it's happening right now in Scotland, right now in this very constituency. And it's been happening for too long. And the only way that we can change that is if we can do just what I said there, which is by putting money into people's pockets, by getting folk the standard of life that they deserve, so that nobody is having to rely on charity to feed themselves or their children, but they're able to earn a decent wage and have a life that's free from anxiety.
The media have been running stories like this 20-year-old is poised to unseat Douglas Alexander and whatnot. It's easy to get caught up in that kind of attitude and believe your own hype. What keeps you grounded, and have you met Douglas, and what's his attitude to you been like?
Firstly, I suppose what keeps us grounded is the fact that this isn't about me. I did not get involved in politics in order to get a career. I did not get involved in politics in order to earn a high wage or anything. I mean, the thing that I was always brought up to believe, that true politicians and good people are about giving a voice to those who don't have one. And right now there are too many people suffering at the hands of the Westminster establishment, and that both the Conservatives and the Labour Party want to continue. There are too many people suffering in silence, and it's about time that they had somebody who understands the issues that are affecting them and the problems that are causing their lives to be so anxious, to go to Westminster and argue their case and to stand up for them.
I want to talk to you a little about your statement on nuclear weapons and how much money is spent on that. You said it is immoral, but what could and would you actually do to change those plans?
Well, the only way that we can actually enforce that change is if Scotland can unite as a country and say, do you know what, we deserve better than what we've been getting. I find it ridiculous that we have a situation where we're talking about austerity and we're talking about £30 billion more cuts that both Labour and the Conservatives have signed up to, who are going to say that we want more cuts. How can they say that? How can they say that ordinary people should suffer more, all the while they're able to suddenly fork out £100 billion for nuclear weapons that are going to sit and rust on that Clyde? Is it not time that we invested that money onshore and had people living a better standard of life? But the only way that we can do that is if we have a strong enough group of SNP MPs. And this is why Thursday is so important. We need as many people as possible to go, do you know what? We do deserve better than this, and we're going to go for it this time and vote SNP.
You talk about social justice in the bio on your website. Do you believe there is a disconnect between politicians and the people? How wide is it, and what will you do to close it?
I think it's incredibly wide just now, and I actually think the Labour Party are the perfect example of that. That's a party that I was brought up to believe stood up for ordinary folk and stood up against the Tories. My whole family were Labour. And yet what we now have is a party that have signed up to the same level of cuts as the Conservatives. The problem with the Westminster establishment, whether it be Labour in control or the Tories in control, is that it's filled with middle-aged, middle-class guys that have no real understanding or grasp of the problems that ordinary people are facing. They have too much self-interest and too many similar interests. The only way that we can get politics the way it should be, which is by having politicians that know what's happening in an area, that know the problems people are facing, is if we vote for them. And that's why I would encourage anybody, lend us your vote, lend the SNP your vote on Thursday.
So May the 7th comes, we're all up late watching, and it's announced you're the winner. The next morning on May the 8th, what will be the first thing you do as a newly elected MP?
Go to my bed for a sleep.
And is there any final thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I just think genuinely that this is an opportunity like we've never had before. In general elections throughout Scotland's history, certainly for the last 50 years, it's always just been, we'll vote Labour, and that's it. Vote Labour to keep out the Tories. It's the biggest myth that Scotland's ever been told. And actually the reality is that even if we did get that Labour government, they wouldn't be all that different to the Conservatives. What we're now seeing is people going, well, wait a minute, we have been voting Labour for the last 50 years and things aren't getting better. We have been voting Labour in this constituency time after time. We've had a representative for 15 years and yet prices are still going through the roof and my wages aren't. Yet that town hall has shut down, yet that park is empty now. It's time that we got people who understand what's happening, people who want to change it. This election's been brilliant because parties have been forced to earn your vote, and that's the way it should be. Parties should always have to earn it so that they can come up with the highest quality argument and come up with policies that put you first and put people first. And the only party that seems to be doing that right now is the SNP. But the only way we can transform that into anything material and transform that into your lives is if you trust us and lend us your vote on Thursday.
Mhairi Black, thank you.
Cheers.